In his previous life, he offended a malicious male partner due to his biological father. Orange has become a chess piece for malicious male partners to seek revenge. Firstly, the paternity test was falsified, transforming from a twin daughter to an adopted daughter. Kidnapped by a malicious male partner again, father and daughter died together at the bottom of the sea. Until a new life, Orange wanted to tell her biological father the truth, but unexpectedly dressed up in a 9-month-old bun. Is the identity still a little orphan adopted by the Chi family? 9-month-old Orange looked depressed and bit his pacifier, secretly swearing that in this life, he must make his father believe that I am his own daughter. So on the first day of returning to the Chi family, Orange held on to Chi Wenting's calves, hoping to let her father's love run rampant. But the young version of Stinky Dad looked disgusted as he kicked her diaper and said, "Do you want to defecate? I won't wipe it for you, it smells so bad." 9-month-old Orange. Who wants to poop? They want to get close to you. But when he opened his mouth, he said, "Ah, ah, 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 ah. Chi Wenting looked at her 2 baby teeth and threatened mischievously, "If you're any more aggressive, you'll pour out your milk." As he spoke, he picked up the orange milk bottle and secretly tasted it in his hand. TSK, the little orphan's thing is just unpleasant to drink. Orange. You will regret telling me, little orphan. What's wrong, you're not convinced? Chi Wen tugged at Xiao Jojo on her head like a young man in the courtyard. If you're not convinced, bite me. Orange. I never expected my young father to be so childish. How can I make Stinky Dad believe that I am his daughter now? Novel keyword. Warning. Tuan Chong Xiao Nai Bao has excessive sugar content. No pop-ups, warning. Tuan Chong Xiao Nai Bao has excessive sugar content. Download complete TXT collection, warning. Tuan Chong Xiao Nai Bao has excessive sugar content. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1, Regenerating a 9-month-old baby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, Regenerating a 9-month-old baby. Has the child been brought back? Has the paternity test report been released yet? Mrs. Chi nodded and said, "We're out. Sweetness belongs to our family, not Orange." Mr. Chi let out a heavy hum on the phone and said, "Then send the Orange back to avoid delaying her parents' search for her." Mrs. Chi sighed and said, "I'm afraid it's not possible. It said that the child was abandoned by his parents, and no one wants to send him back. And it's sweet and sticky." As soon as she picked up the orange, she cried, afraid it might not be easy to separate them. After listening, Mr. Chi pondered deeply, since that's the case, let's keep it at home for maintenance. I think this child has a connection with the Chi family. Has Wen Ting notified us? Mrs. Chi nodded and said, "I've been notified, he's heading home." Orange had just woken up when she heard the voices of her grandparents. She widened her black eyes in shock, thinking she was dreaming. Isn't she already dead? How can you still hear the voices of your grandparents? Did my grandparents also die? Orange hurried out to have a look. She just stood up and sat down. Xiaorou's feet were the same as Xiaobai Mantu, and she could not walk at all. She lowered her head and looked at her round and soft belly, her small hands also fleshy. There is still a small Jojo tattooed on her head, and at first glance, she is not yet 1 year old. Duh. What's going on? Is it difficult for her to be reborn and return to her infancy? Mrs. Chi turned around and saw that she was awake, smiling with a loving expression on her face. Oh, Orange is awake. Orange saw her grandmother calling her, her excited little hands fluttering. Inside, Grandma Mrs. Chi smiled and picked her up, weighing her up. "Oh, this child is quite heavy and likable," she said. "The little round face is plump, the little pacifier is red and chubby, especially the curly little Jojo on the head, which is very cute." Even Aunt Fong, who has been serving Mrs. Chi for her whole life, praised her. "This child is really handsome. Like a snowball, milky white, these big eyes look like black and beautiful pupils, beautiful like a mixed-race baby. Unfortunately, it's not the young master's. Unfortunately, this child is quite spiritual and looks likable," said Mrs. Chi. Orange saw her grandmother like her, and little Nai's face was particularly happy, excited and fluttering. Mrs. Chi smiled and was about to tease her when she heard her granddaughter cry sweetly. Tian is a timid person. As soon as I woke up and saw the unfamiliar environment, I immediately became timid and cried. Woo. Well, Mrs. Chi, who was crying, felt heartbroken. "First, put down the orange and pick up the sweet granddaughter. Sweetheart, stop crying. Grandma, hold you." While coaxing, "Go and brew sweet milk powder." Leaving Orange stunned, he looked at the scene before him. She remembers that all three of their father and daughter were dead. Before her death, she realized that she had been living in a novel. In the book, her father is a wealthy and powerful villain. Because he did not borrow 10 billion yuan from a malicious male partner, which prevented him from paying off his debts, he was held in grudge by the malicious male partner. And count all the family's downfall on her father. Plus, her mother is the love of a malicious male supporting partner, but now she's with her father, the hatred is even greater. As for my biological father and mother, it's a bloody love story of you chasing me and running away. Her mother Lan Jiaojiao is an orphan girl who met Qi Wenting while working in a restaurant. One of them is aloof and lacks love, while the other is insecure and sensitive. Due to a misunderstanding, my mother Lan Jiaojiao mistakenly thought that Qi Wenting was only after her beauty and would not marry her. So after Lan Jiaojiao became pregnant, she directly ran away with the ball. Because she was afraid that Qi Wenting would kill her child, she hid in the countryside and didn't even dare to go for a prenatal examination. I don't know if there are 2 babies in my belly. Until 8 months later, Lan Jiaojiao had a stomachache and wanted to go to the hospital for examination. But I met a vicious male supporting character on the road. During their argument, Lan Jiaojiao fell off a cliff and was severely unconscious. The malicious male partner sent her to the hospital, and the child was also delivered by cesarean section ahead of schedule. It is a pair of fraternal twin sisters. Their appearance is very different. Watching these twins with different appearances, the malicious male partner had a plan in mind and was planning to use the 2 children to destroy the Qi family. The most unlucky one among them is Orange. She was transferred due to paternity testing, which made the Qi family think she was an unwanted orphan rather than a biological daughter. At first, Orange thought she was an adopted daughter. It wasn't until the malicious male partner told her at the age of 15 that she was the true daughter of the Qi family. He also cheated her that Tian was a fake daughter, trying to provoke the relationship between sisters. At first, Orange didn't believe it and secretly went to do a paternity test, but surprisingly, it all showed that she was biological. So she told her family about it, but no one believed it. Because the appraisal reports received by the Qi family only show that Tian is the biological one, and she is not. Orange was heartbroken to see no one trust her, and when she was instigated by a malicious male partner, she started arguing with her biological father. As a result, the father and daughter were kidnapped, and the kidnappers even stirred up discord and asked Qi Wenting, "I heard that Qi Orange is your true daughter. Now that both the real and fake daughters are here, which one are you planning to save?" Orange was not hopeful at the time. Because she not only caused trouble at the Qi family, but also bullied Tian at school, her father must have disliked her for a long time and wouldn't have saved her. But at the moment when the ship exploded, Qi Wenting held one in each hand, burned her back, and even pulled her and Tian off the ship. At that time, Orange was shocked. After all, her father's attitude towards her was usually reserved. I didn't expect to give up on her at a critical moment. I thought the father and daughter could leave safely, but the speedboat they escaped from also exploded. With a loud bang, the father and daughter were all killed. Before her death, Orange realized that the so-called true and false heirlooms were actually deliberately arranged by someone. My goal is probably to make the Chi family restless. Unfortunately, she understood too late. If she could do it again, she would definitely not be deceived and harm the Chi family. I didn't expect to wake up and actually be reborn. It's just that the time for rebirth is a bit early. She is now a babbling baby, and her father cannot understand her baby language. And if he tells the truth, will Dad believe it? After all, the plot set in this book only changes after the mystery of one's background at the age of 15. If you force it, you may get stuck and bugged, so don't harm your father's family then. It seems that we need to find another way. Mrs. Chi watched her little expression change and change, her pacifier chattering incessantly, and it was quite cute. This child, don't know what he's thinking. Aunt Fong smiled and said, the little ones are all wild and imaginative, probably imitating your side just now. Mrs. Chi pondered, it seems that we need to be good role models in the future, otherwise it wouldn't be good if we were to learn from them. As he was speaking, Chi Wenting returned. Mom! What about that little brat? Orange looked up and saw a tall man with deep eyes, resembling a man of mixed race. Is this the dad from his youth? He's quite handsome. It's just that the temperament is a bit naughty and difficult to approach. Mrs. Chi handed him Tian. Oh, your daughter, my own. Chi Wenting clumsily took Tian, and his handsome face looked disdainful. Is that all? Soft and weak, with pitiful big eyes and a little white rabbit-like appearance that wants to cry or not, he has not inherited his masculinity at all. This is too weak. Sweetheart was already afraid of strangers, and being stared at by him so fiercely, she flattened her pacifier and cried in fear. Open a new article. This article belongs to the Dad Can't Recognize Me as His Daughter series, a warm and lengthy article. The truth about the father-daughter relationship will only appear in the final moments, don't worry. During this period, the essence is the battle of wits and courage between the naive father and the baby Orange. Take your time, Momoda, love you, end of this chapter. Chapter 2, Treat Children as Toys, right. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2, Treat Children as Toys, right. Mrs. Chi was too angry. Can you hold it? Did it hurt her? With a heart-wrenching embrace, she glared at Chi Wenting with a disdainful expression. Everyone calls you gentle, how can you be a dad? She also loves to cry too much, Chi Wen said with a big head just like the woman Lan Jiaojiao, she's useless and knows how to cry. Orange sat on the carpet holding a bottle, listening to Chi Wenting's disdainful but actually doting tone, a little envious. She thought for a moment, threw down the bottle, and clattered up to Chi Wenting. Then with round big eyes open, the chubby little one grabbed Chi Wenting's calf and stood up with the help of force. Dada. Dad. Chi Wenting couldn't understand her baby language and pinched her little flesh face with a disdainful expression. Is this the little follower? Mrs. Chi nodded and said, yes. I saw that Tian was very sticky to her, so I brought her back. Don't think she's young, she's actually quite obedient. Words are filled with heartache for oranges. After hearing this, Chi Wenting frowned and said, her parents are really not human. Even so young children throw it away. Squatting down and pinching the small flesh face of the orange, he didn't object. Okay, since they don't want it, let's stay and keep it as a toy. Let Tian, the crying ghost, be your playmate. 9 months of orange, why make me a playmate again? I won't do it. Chi Wenting saw her feeling angry and childishly tugged at her fleshy ear. Why, even you despise sweetheart, that crybaby. Orange is about to shake its head. Sorry, you don't have a choice, Chi Wenting sneered, because I also have no choice. Orange was not convinced and protested with a pouted mouth, pup pup. I want to say no, but I spit a lot of saliva. Chi Wenting's face was sprayed with saliva and he frowned. Little devil, don't spit on me. Dirty, who dares to take you? These words pierced people's hearts, and Orange flattened her small mouth. With a single cry, she burst into tears. She was already depressed about her background, and her stinky father actually attacked her and didn't want her, so she naturally felt sad. Plus, the baby has poor emotional control, crying when she is sad and laughing when she is happy. She couldn't control herself for a moment, crying pitifully all by herself. Mrs. Chi felt heartbroken. Staring at Chi Wenting, do you insist on bullying her? Isn't she pitiful enough? Her parents don't want her, so you don't want her yet when you pick her up. Upon hearing this, Orange felt even more aggrieved as she stood against Xiao Jiujiu's small face. Chi Wenting looked at her pitiful crying and let out a awkward click, the little devil is just a trouble. But he still squatted down and rubbed his orange curly hair with his big hand, speaking awkwardly, all right, don't cry, I'll milk you tonight. Orange snorted and extended a short fleshy hand to him, asking him to hold it. Chi Wenting picked her up and snorted, it's so dirty. But still took the wet tissue handed over by Aunt Fong and wiped her nose. Orange could feel the warmth on both sides of Chi Wenting's face, and felt that her father might still be in love with her. Happy in the heart, the milky little face immediately showed a smile. Hee hee baba, this time I called more fluently, and Chi Wenting also understood. He widened his eyes in surprise and gave her a strange look. I'm not your dad, you have to call me uncle, he said. The hospital only said that Lan Jiaojiao gave birth to a daughter, which is sweet. The remaining one is the child that no one in the orphanage wants, not his daughter at all. It's just that this child is still young, maybe he learned it when his family asked Tian to call him dad. He handed the orange to Aunt Fong and instructed her, teach her to call her uncle in the future. Otherwise, let Lan Jiaojiao know that he has 2 daughters and how she might cry when she wakes up. That woman likes to daydream and may think that she is secretly having children with others outside, which would lead to a big misunderstanding. Aunt Fong didn't know what he was thinking. She thought he didn't like oranges, so she nodded and said, okay, I got it. Orange is depressed. I didn't expect my whole family to be kept in the dark even after a lifetime of rebirth. It seems that the plot of the mystery of one's background cannot escape. Now we can only cultivate a relationship with Stinky Dad and see if we can make him see a difference. Just don't know if Stinky Dad can tell. Duh. Come on. Aunt Fong laughed when she saw her small fists tightly clenched, her chubby face bulging, and a look of cheering herself on. Madam, look, Orange is really a teasing baby. Mrs. Chi hugged the timid sweetness and smiled at the words. Yeah, with oranges around, sweetness may be infected, and as we grow up, we can be more daring. Otherwise, it's not good to always be so timid. As the miss of the Chi family, I have to be elegant and generous, but Tian is just too timid. But forget it, I'm timid at first, and gradually educating will definitely be better. Aunt Fong also comforted her, Madam, don't worry too much. Miss Tian is a young master's bloodline, and her genes are definitely not bad. When Chi Wenting was a child, he was a mixed-world little demon king and had no element of cowardice at all. Maybe I just got home and haven't adapted yet. I'll be fine when I get older. Mrs. Chi also thought the same way. Yes, the 2 children are only over 9 months old. From now on, I will personally take care of them and see the world more, which will increase their courage. Orange's eyes lit up, and she didn't expect Mrs. Chi to include her in it, which moved her a bit. After all, my grandmother had no idea of her true identity, and surprisingly treated her so well. At first glance, the family members are still so kind. Aunt Fong looked at her big, sparkling eyes and smiled, this child, crying and laughing from time to time, has such rich emotions. Mrs. Chi also finds oranges interesting. Such a lovely child, I don't know what her parents think, but they said, don't want it, and decided not to do it. Because the malicious male actor made up a tragic story for Orange. She said that her parents prioritized sons over daughters and gave birth to 3 or 4 daughters in a row, but they didn't want oranges and just threw them away. It was a kind-hearted person who sent them to an orphanage. So in Mrs. Chi's eyes, Orange is just a poor child. Aunt Fong also said, such a lovely child, they can't bear it. It's really a sin. Orange felt even more depressed when she saw that they had all been deceived by malicious male partners, and her little head leaned against Aunt Fong's shoulder. Biting her chubby little hand, wondering how to make her grandparents and dad recognize her as their child. End of this chapter. Chapter 3, I Am the Younger Sister. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3, I Am the Younger Sister. She is still young and can't speak yet. Even if they can speak, no one believes a child's words. It seems that we need to find another way. The more Orange thought about it, the more drowsy it became, and finally fell asleep on Aunt Fong's shoulder. Aunt Fong saw her asleep and looked at Tian, who was also sleeping on Mrs. Chi's shoulder. She smiled kindly. These 2 children have the same routine, they sleep as they please, it's really synchronized. Mrs. Chi also smiled and said, yes, if it weren't for their completely different looks, I would have thought they were twins. But according to Dean Wong of the orphanage, oranges are a few days older than sweetness. Since I'm a few days old, that's my sister. In the future, I still hope that Orange can play with sweet little sister. If this was heard by Orange in her sleep, she would probably have to spit out 2 mouthfuls of old blood again. Even though she comes out 5 minutes later than Sweetheart, she is the younger sister. However, the Chi family is all kept in the dark, and we cannot blame them. Mrs. Chi placed the 2 children on the crib, covered them with small blankets, and shook the crib, humming a little tune with a loving expression on her face. Seeing her love for children so much, Aunt Fong followed her soft and whispered, now that the young master has a child, you should also breathe a sigh of relief. Previously, Chi Wenting's rebellion was difficult to understand, which made him unwilling to marry and even more unwilling to go on blind dates. He even went against his family and directly found a little lover outside. Even if I found my little lover, I actually let him run with the ball. Even if he runs away and doesn't chase after her, even Mrs. Chi doesn't know if he likes Lan Jiao. Still don't like it. She didn't understand either of her 2 sons at home. Chi Wenting and his younger brother Chi Jianghe are twins. The 2 brothers are identical twins with extremely similar height and appearance. It's about having a completely different personality. Chi Wenting has an awkward and difficult to guess personality, and he also likes to say sarcastic things. Sometimes, even Mrs. Chi can't understand him. The youngest son, Chi Jianghe, may seem obedient, but in reality, he is just a smiling tiger. You say yours, he goes in one ear and out the other, and doesn't even do what he doesn't like, which can make people angry. Both sons are not good at picking on each other, and Mrs. Chi feels a headache when she thinks of them. At least Wenting has a daughter, and the scenery on the other side of the river is unknown. That kid has been away from going abroad for over a year, but he hasn't been able to come back due to the sudden disaster. Now that the disaster situation is lifted, I think we should be able to come back. Can you call and ask when he will be back? Aunt Fong nodded and said, I'm going now. After a while, Aunt Fong said, Madam, the second young master said there are some issues with the foreign company and he won't be able to come back until next year. Mrs. Chi looked at the 2 lovely children on the bed inside, forget it, let him do it. I can't help my mother, she now has a granddaughter and doesn't want to care about those 2 bastards anymore. Aunt Fong smiled and said, you don't have to be too melancholic either. Both young masters have grown up and can take care of themselves. During the conversation, Orange woke up. She was awakened from hunger. The baby digests quickly after drinking milk, and immediately feels hungry after taking a nap. She slowly opened her eyes and stood up with a bundle of curly little paws, her fleshy little arms gripping the edge of the crib. Is there anyone there? This baby is hungry. Aunt Fong heard the commotion and came to hug her. Wake up. Orange extended her little fleshy hand and hugged Aunt Fong's neck, playing coquettish with her. Inside. Aunt Fong understood and said, Are you hungry? Wait here for a while, I'll go make some milk powder for you. The Chi family hasn't had a baby for a long time, and Aunt Fong has forgotten what steps to take when taking care of the child. Orange is actually very obedient, sitting obediently on the carpet waiting for her to come back. In no time, Aunt Fong prepared the milk powder and brought it to her. Dripped on my hand and tried the temperature, drink it, it's not too hot. Thank you. Orange hugged the bottle with both hands, lay back, raised her chubby short legs, and started drinking the bottle. Aunt Fong looked at the plump cheeks she ate, and the more she looked at them, the cuter they became. The show fondly touched the little tug on her head and sighed, You are also lucky. Being abandoned by your parents and able to come to the Chi family, I think it's all a stroke of fate. Orange's hand, drinking milk. Looking at Aunt Fong with a gloomy expression. My heart says my fate is not good at all, the cannon fodder is deadly. As she was speaking, Tian woke up. She opened her wet eyes and let out a few timid moans, her big eyes watery as she gazed at Orange, looking afraid of the unfamiliar environment. Aunt Fong walked over to hug her, but she reached out to Orange. Orange is helpless, although she is the younger sister, the older sister is really timid. If you don't hug her, you will definitely cry. You can only pick up the bottle, crawl over, and the chubby little hand reaches into the fence, grabbing the sweet little flesh hand. Duh. It's okay, don't be afraid. Sweetheart was not afraid of her presence and smiled foolishly. I like oranges. Orange looked at her silly smile and sighed helplessly, thinking to herself that her sister would always be like a little white rabbit in her 2 lifetimes. Aunt Fong was happy to see their interaction and quickly went to make milk powder for Tian. She then held Tian and whispered to her. After all, sweetness is a true treasure, and you can't just give her a bottle to handle it casually. You still need to take careful care of it. An orange that was thrown on the ground and drank its own milk bottle, the little heart suffered another 10,000 points of damage. After a while, a maid came over and said to Aunt Fong, The old man has something to say, please take the young lady over first. This young lady naturally refers to sweetness. Mr. Chi has been busy all day and has only recently come back to deal with this matter. Aunt Fong quickly tidied up Tian, put on a beautiful little dress, and quickly carried Tian over to show to Mr. Chi. Leave Orange alone in the baby room. Orange looked at their departing figures and sat in a small group at the door, sighing. It seems that the Chi family still doesn't know the truth. After some thought, she decided to go over to her grandfather's place to take a look. At least establish a good relationship with her family before she can speak. Only in the future will people believe in her bizarre things. The more she thought, the more motivated she became, crawling out of the baby room with a bottle in her mouth. She is familiar with the terrain of the Chi family, but it is difficult to climb up when it becomes smaller. By the time she climbed into the hall, Mr. Chi was already holding Sweet with a joyful expression on his face, shouting obediently to his granddaughter. Orange was lying at the door peeking, her big eyes full of envy, but she dared not enter. Now the Chi family thinks she's an orphan that no one wants. If she goes in and asks for a hug, she might be annoying, right? The little tug on her head drooped due to her frustration. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, Poor Orphan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4, Poor Orphan. Mr. Chi held on to the sweet affection of his beloved child. But because of the stubble on his face, he pricked it sweetly and ended up curling his lips and crying loudly. Wow, she was already timid, being held by such a serious-faced grandfather. she couldn't stop crying out of fear. Mrs. Chi held her in pain and glared at Mr. Chi. "You too, with such a prickly beard, you don't know how to shave it. Look at how sweet it is for us." Mr. Chi looked at his granddaughter crying so sadly, which made him feel a bit proud. "Cough and cough, I haven't been holding a baby for many years. I forgot about it for a while." Mrs. Chi glared at him and said, "When you were young, you didn't hug Wenting in Jianghe. Now, naturally, you won't hug your granddaughter." Mr. Chi was scolded by Mrs. Chi, and blushed. "Well, what can I do if my son didn't let me hold him? When I was a child, my sons didn't like to be sticky, and he was also a straight steel dad, so naturally he couldn't do anything to tease his children. Now that I'm getting older, seeing my granddaughter makes my love run wild. But why is this child so timid? Does he cry after just one hug? When I was a child, Wenting wasn't like this either. His two sons, one proud and eccentric and the other smiling tiger, none of them have ever been afraid of him. Sweet, why are you so timid?" Mrs. Chi kept her guard short and glared at him, saying, "Sweetheart was sent to an orphanage as soon as she was born. Without a family to accompany her, it makes her timid." Mr. Chi felt that the old lady had eaten explosives today and didn't dare to talk back. His eyes were guilty and he glanced elsewhere. At this glance, I saw Orange hiding by the door eavesdropping. "That little head is lying by the door, the little tugs on its head are moving, it's cute. Who is there?" Upon hearing this, Mrs. Chi also looked over and saw that Orange had arrived. "Hurry over and bring the orange over," saying to Mr. Chi. "She is Orange, the little orphan I told you about this morning. Poor thing, it said that her parents prioritize boys over girls and threw away 4 daughters in a row. It was the orphanage that picked her up." When she went to pick up the child, Mrs. Chi saw Orange and Tian hugging each other, and her heart was touched. By a stroke of luck, she brought both of them back. Mr. Chi looked at such a lovely child with a rare hint of heartache in his eyes. "Since we brought it back, let's raise it together," he said. "Perhaps this child has a connection with our family." Orange was moved by the sound and took a sniff, wanting to cry but feeling embarrassed to do so. Old Master Chi looked down at her small shoulder and suddenly felt a little distressed, and then he picked her up. "All right, don't cry. From now on, take this place as your home and your grandparents will love you." Although he is a strange little orphan, Mr. Chi always feels that this child has a sense of familiarity. Orange didn't expect her serious grandfather from her previous life to be so kind in this life. She was a little moved for a moment and reached out her fleshy little hand to kiss Mr. Chi's cheek. Then shyly nestled on his shoulder, the little pacifier giggled and giggled. Mr. Chi didn't expect this child to be so close, so he suddenly felt happy. This little girl is quite attractive and rare. Mrs. Chi smiled and said, "Yes, if it weren't for her paternity test not being done by Wenting, I would have thought she and Tian were twins. Previously, I was afraid of misidentifying my child, so I identified all the similar age babies in the orphanage at the same time. Make sure that Tian and Chi Wenting have a father-daughter relationship, and the other children are not." Orange knew that her identification had been tampered with by a malicious male partner, and it was normal for the Chi family not to recognize her. However, her grandparents were still quite kind to her, and she decided to enjoy their love for the time being, regardless of anything else. Mr. Chi saw that she had been leaning against his arms all along, and he was not afraid of being angry. On the contrary, his chubby hands kept hugging his neck, showing a liking for him. My mood instantly improved a lot. He asked Mrs. Chi, "How is that blue Jiao? I heard about someone entering the intensive care unit before, but I don't know how the situation is." Mrs. Chi sighed and said, "It seems like she has become a vegetable. I don't know if she can wake up." Wenting didn't say anything in person, but he sent the person to the best treatment hospital abroad. I think he still cares. Mr. Chi hates iron for not turning into steel. He comes first in education and work, but he can't even handle a woman. I really like it. It would be great to bring it back directly, and I can also have a few more children. Unfortunately, they refuse to listen to advice and only do what they want to do. Now that people have become vegetative, what is the use of remedial measures at this time? Mrs. Chi took care of him and said, "Do you still have the face to talk about him? It was you who insisted on sending him to endure hardship and training back then. If he didn't have any childhood, would you still expect him to learn how to fall in love?" Because the Chi family had a great career, their heirs needed Iron Man-like training from a young age and had almost no childhood of their own. Fortunately, both Chi Wenting and Chi Jianghe brothers are very intelligent, and their learning and practice are basically ranked first. But in love, it really falls short of expectations. Neither of the brothers seems to be in a romantic relationship. Mr. Chi also knew that his educational methods were a bit flawed, so he remained silent and didn't mention anything about his son. On the other hand, Orange listened attentively and even touched his face with a small piece of flesh. "Duh. Grandpa, don't be angry." Mr. Chi was a bit moved and said, "This child is quite considerate. Unlike two stinky kids at home who don't get close to him at all. Even his granddaughter Tian is afraid of him, it's difficult for him to live." Orange followed with a sigh, thinking that they didn't know how to live their days in the future. It's really difficult to have a baby. Mrs. Chi looked at this old and young person, inexplicably amused. "Alright, Wen Ting is dealing with things at the hospital and will be here in a moment. Please speak up later and don't argue anymore." Mr. Chi was not convinced and said, "Do I love to argue so much? No way. Orange and Mrs. Chi is this called not yet. At 7 o'clock, Chi Wenting will return on time." After entering the door, I saw Mr. Chi sitting on the carpet, playing a doll throwing game with two little kids. Sweetly smiling like a little idiot, when Mr. Chi threw it, she kept laughing non-stop. Even the little orphan next to him was giggling, drooling, and his big eyes were gone. He walked over with a disdainful expression and poked the chubby orange diaper with his toes. Then she poked the sweet diaper again. Little devil. The two children were taken aback and looked up at him together. That little action was as neat as copying and pasting, and the little tugs on the head were equally neat. Mr. Chi looked at the movements of the two children and glared at Chi Wenting. "Do you have some love? Why do you kick them when you have nothing to do? Didn't you see that the strawberry patterned diaper was punctured flat?" Chi Wenting snorted and said arrogantly, "I was greeting them." Mr. Chi poke someone's diaper and say hello. There's something wrong. On the other hand, Orange was very excited to see Chi Wenting. Climbed over and grabbed Chi Wenting's pants legs, asking him to hug him. Baba, hug, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Orphans are easy to support. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Orphans are easy to support. Chi Wenting saw her calling her father again, frowned, picked her up, and corrected her. "I said I'm your uncle, not your father. Your father is still giving birth to a son in the village. Orange Dad, you will regret what you said in the future." But Chi Wenting clearly couldn't understand, thinking that she was ultimately a little baby and couldn't understand human language. "Did you take care of my daughter today?" he asked her as he pinched his orange fleshy little face with his big hand. "If not, I won't give you milk to drink." Orange, the little round face, glared at him angrily and let out a hum. Don't drink. Throw the bottle on the ground, it really doesn't drink anymore." Chi Wenting chuckled, "Are you provoking me? If you don't drink, I insist on letting you drink." Picking up the bottle and about to feed it into Orange's mouth, Orange spat out and sprayed Chi Wenting with saliva all over her face. "You." Chi Wenting closed his eyes tightly and took a deep breath. "Bullying people, isn't it?" Orange shook its little head proudly and said, "Lala, and then bullied you." "Who let you bully me?" Chi Wenting's face grew colder and colder, so scared that Orange thought he was going to hit someone. But Chi Wenting angrily shouted, "Mom! This little ghost is bullying me." Mrs. Chi said perfunctorily from a distance, "She really likes you, so just endure it." Chi Wenting couldn't help but pursed her lips and sulked. Orange looked at him like this, eating chubby hands, and felt like she was going too far. Just as he was about to climb over and apologize, he saw Chi Wenting picking up Sweet. "Roast to Tian, little white rabbit, this kid bullied me, you hit her quickly and avenge my father." Sweet eating a pacifier, big eyes full of doubt. "Duh. Who is little white rabbit? Who is the little ghost? I don't know you." Chi Wenting looked at her silly and sweet appearance and let out a sigh, "You really follow your mother. She doesn't look very smart." I seemed to understand this sweet sentence, and then I let out a "whoa" and cried angrily. Mr. Chi slapped a burst of chestnuts over. "What's wrong with you? Why do you say she's okay? I don't know if children can't be belittled." Chi Wenting covered his painful head and said, "I thought she couldn't understand." Mr. Chi was furious and said, "Don't understand. He's just small, not stupid. Your mouth is getting more and more annoying when you come out of the company. Speaking, we have to take action again. Mrs. Chi is busy working as a mediator." All right, stop making noise. The child sees that it's time to learn from you." The father and son looked at the carpet together. Sure enough, the two children sat in rows, with big round eyes looking at them, as if they were really studying. Father and son separated at once. Afraid of being taught by the child, I dare not argue anymore. Cough cough, what's that? Orange is sweet. Grandpa and your dad are playing around, we're fine. Don't learn from us. Chi Wenting also twisted and snorted, "Who cares about arguing with you?" Mrs. Chi glanced at him and said, "Children have a strong ability to imitate. In the future, you should think carefully about everything you do and not set a bad example for your children." Father and son looked disdainful on their faces, but they both remembered it in their hearts. Orange looked amused and suddenly felt that her young father was a bit funny. She came over to hug Chi Wenting's calf. She felt that with her father's awkward personality, it would be faster for her to take the initiative to cultivate feelings with them. Chi Wenting saw her come to stick to herself again and said strangely, "Didn't you hate me just now? Why did you stick to me again? Is it the memory of a fish? So it seems that this little orphan, who is not very intelligent, has been brought back in vain. Orange, I'm starting to hate you again, stinky dad." Chi Wenting didn't care about her contempt, picked up Sweetness, thought for a moment, then picked up Orange and took them to eat. The evening meal is rich and mainly used to celebrate the arrival of two little guys at home. Orange and Sweetness can both be consumed as complementary foods. Aunt Fong and Mrs. Chi each fed one. Orange is already hungry, just open your mouth and eat it. Sweet but not too fond of complementary foods, just want to drink a bottle. Mrs. Chi patiently coaxed her and only took a few more bites. Be good, eating some complementary foods is the key to nutrition. Look at oranges and oranges, they taste so delicious. Sweetly, seeing that Orange was eating with a good appetite, she opened her mouth and wanted to learn from Orange. Chi Wenting didn't expect that fool Sweetness would learn from Orange, and he sneered, "I'm not promising." Looking at the Orange with a good appetite again. The cold nose snorted coldly, and the mouth owed a compliment. "It's okay, the little orphan is just easy to support. Eat whatever you give." Angry Orange wants to stare at him again. Chi Wenting found it amusing to see her angry and reached out to pull out her little tug. "If you have the ability, bite me." "Ah, da. Orange Milk glared at him fiercely, clenching his chubby little fist and warning him not to touch his hair. Chi Wenting laughed heartily and was in a good mood, even eating an extra bowl of rice. Mrs. Chi was delighted to see it. "If I had known my son liked him so much, I would have brought back a few more." Chi Wenting don't. He doesn't like children, he just thinks this little orphan is fun, and he doesn't like other little orphans anymore. Other orphan children. We didn't provoke any of you. At night, Mrs. Chi personally hugged Tian Tian and coaxed her to sleep. She brought Tian Tian all day long, and Tian Tian has gradually adapted to her and is willing to let her sleep. But she still needs to look for Oranges while sleeping. Orange doesn't need to be comforted, just lying on the crib with drooping eyelids, almost falling asleep. Tian Tian was also very tired. She turned over and hugged her, with her little head resting on Orange, and fell asleep with her. Mrs. Chi looked at these two children and liked them more and more. Having children at home is lively, said Aunt Fong. Wen Ting and the old man haven't had dinner together for a long time, and we haven't heard their laughter for a long time. Nowadays, as soon as the children arrive, everyone, old and young, smiles so happily, and it turns out that these two children are the happy fruits of the family. Aunt Fong nodded in agreement. Yeah, if Miss Lon is okay, maybe she can have more children with the young master and make the house more lively. Mrs. Chi sighed and said, I've seen their situation quite clearly. If Lon Jiaojiao can wake up, Wen Ting can marry if she wants. Mr. Chi himself wants to help his sons choose a daughter. Lol. However, Chi Wenting and Chi Jianghe are clearly not obedient masters. When they were young, they were obedient because they were powerless to resist. Now that I'm older and my wings are hard, I naturally don't want to obey family orders anymore, one by one rebellious. Anyway, I don't care about it anymore. Now I just need to bring some orange sweetness and wait for them to grow up before we talk. As he was speaking, Chi Wenting came in. He walked over and glanced at the two radish heads sleeping together on the crib, then snorted. It's really sticky. Mouth disdainful, hands also annoying to pinch the little flesh faces of the two children. Mrs. Chi was afraid that he would wake up the child, so she took away his pig hand and lowered her voice, don't wake them up. She finally managed to fall asleep, and if she cried again later, she would be crying. Chi Wenting snorted and finally withdrew his hand. With a proud snort, if you don't let me see, then I'll go back to sleep. After speaking, I really left without looking back. End of this chapter. Chapter 6, Who Says Babies Don't Like It? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6, Who Says Babies Don't Like It? Mrs. Chi was speechless. Rose to Aunt Fong, what kind of person? He doesn't look like a father at all. Aunt Fong smiled and comforted, Hi, young master is also a father for the first time. It's normal for him to not understand a lot, but he will gradually learn. Mrs. Chi sighed and said, I hope so. Although Chi Wenting appeared to be bullying the children, it was evident that he did not dislike these two children. If he disliked two children, he would have left them here long ago. But he returned as usual, obviously still thinking about it. Hey, this child is just awkward and does things differently from others. He likes children not to be hugged, but to be pinched, and even flicked, like a big villain. However, if children don't understand, Mrs. Chi can still understand that Chi Wenting likes children, so she can rest assured. On the second day, Chi Wenting took a look at the baby room before coming to work. Seeing two little things still sleeping, mischievously took two diapers and put them on their heads to prevent them from getting cold. After finishing these things, he went to work in a good mood and smiled all day, feeling a bit scared even when he called Secretary Zhang. Boss, are you in such a good mood today? It's okay, Chi Wenting snorted coldly. Secretary Zhang knew that he had picked up the little daughter a few days ago, and he was probably happy about the child situation. He couldn't help but praise her, your little daughter must be very cute, right? After all, Miss Lon looks pretty good. If the child looks like a mother, she might be quite cute. Chi Wenting closed her eyes and took a deep breath when she thought of Tian Tian, the crying ghost, before uttering any words of disgust. Are you not busy? Secretary Zhang saw that his tone was not good and secretly flattered him. He quickly admitted his mistake and said, "I'll go get busy first." He ran away with the document. Wait until it gets dark. The driver arrived at the designated time to pick up the person, and Chi Wenting sat in the back seat, still reading the documents. He only looked up when passing by a mother and baby shop. There are several cute dolls hanging on the shop window, as well as a few baby cars, all with big brand logos. By a stroke of fate, he asked the driver to turn to that mother and baby shop. The salesperson looked delighted at his young and handsome appearance and said, "Sir, did you buy a toy for your son or for your daughter? If it's a boy, the quality of our cars here is very good, they are resistant to impact and have sufficient batteries. If it's for girls, these dolls are pretty good." Chi Wenting let out a cold hum and suddenly saw several dark things placed in the corner of the wall, and his eyes lit up. "Wrap up that black furry thing and those realistic snakes for me." Salesperson, "Sir, those are all decorations left over from last Halloween, and we happen to be putting them away. Are you sure you want to buy them?" She was trying to persuade Chi Wenting not to buy, but unfortunately, she only liked those few. "Help me wrap it up, I'll take it." Salesperson, driver, "Are you sure this is for sending babies?" After arriving home, Orange and Sweet are both awake. The two little guys are sitting in rows at the entrance of the living room, seemingly waiting for Chi Wenting to come back. Orange are here specifically to wait. The baby's life is boring, and she still wants to find someone to talk to. Especially looking for Dad. It's almost 7 o'clock now, and her father should also be back, so she crawled over to the door and waited by herself. Sweetheart watched her come and followed her, a little follower. Whatever she did, Sweetheart did it. Orange looked back at her silly sister and sighed helplessly. Little Ro touched Sweet's head and said to himself, "Why is this dear sister still so foolish? Isn't she really following Mom?" However, she had never seen Lan Jiaojiao herself in her previous life and did not know what her biological mother's personality was. But listening to Chi Wenting's tone of disdain, it seemed that Lan Jiaojiao herself was also a foolish character. As he was speaking, Chi Wenting arrived. "Oh, are you two here to pick me up from work?" Orange was happy when she saw him, happily supporting the door frame and standing up. Her small mouth, revealing 2 small teeth, smiled at Chi Wenting. "Hee Baba," Chi Wenting corrected her many times, but the effect seems to be not good. He pressed one finger against Orange's small head, which he wanted to approach, and said with disdain, "I told you to call uncle, you won't learn again. I won't hug you next time." Orange pretended not to understand and threw himself into his arms with a smile. His furry little head kept rubbing against him, but he didn't leave. Chi Wenting held her back collar with one hand and sat on the ground for her. A drool on his face, dirty to death. Orange looked at her strawberry saliva towel and it was indeed saliva. There's no way, it's easy to drool during the teething period, and she can't control it. After Chi Wenting finished dealing with her, he went to see Tian again. Tian was not afraid of him this time, but still didn't reach out to hug him. Instead, she hid behind the orange and looked at him like a kitten. Chi Wenting laughed at them in anger. "I don't know, I thought you two were exchanging identities. One actively calls out, 'Dad,' while the other desperately doesn't. But forget it, he has a large number of adults and is too lazy to compare himself with 2 diapers. The driver brought the things over and said, 'Mr. Chi, where are these placed?' 'Put it inside.' 'Okay.' The driver placed large and small toys in the living room and helped to open them neatly. Orange and Sweetheart stared at the strange-shaped toys with wide eyes, feeling a bit reluctant to look straight at them. 2 little radishes face to face, duh. What kind of ghost is that? A plush toy with a black spider. How could the key spider's eyes flicker and shine? Are these really for children to play with, as well as vintage black cars with long black fur and realistic big black snakes?" Chi Wenting looked at the 2 carrot heads on the ground with a bewildered expression and a little smug. "How's it going? Isn't it very novel? The pink dolls that the salesperson recommended to him before were all unsightly. It's not as beautiful as these big kings, big spiders, and big trucks coming. He confidently brought the big spider in front of Sweetheart and said, "Girl, do you like it?" Sweet and sweet. After a moment of confusion, the sound of crying instantly startled the entire villa. Wow! Mrs. Chi was startled and quickly came to see. What's wrong? Sweet, why are you crying? Why did you suddenly cry so badly, despite being obedient all day today? She was still holding a spoon in her hand and hurriedly came in, only to see Tian being scared by a big spider and hiding in Aunt Fong's arms. She immediately looked at the initiator. Angered at Chi Wenting, "Did you buy this black spider?" Chi Wenting was also very depressed. How did I know she didn't like it? He is clearly kind-hearted. Mrs. Chi really wants to beat him up. Which baby likes this black thing? They all like pink and fluffy things. Otherwise, white or sky blue would be fine. There's no way to buy such realistic snakes and spiders for babies. Chi Wenting was not convinced and said, "It's clear that you have taught your child to be too spoiled. Don't you think this little orphan really likes these toys?" Suddenly named Orange Boy, "She doesn't like these toys at all, okay." But for the progress of the father-daughter relationship, she still persevered. "Dada." Holding the black spider, he buried his head in it to show his liking. After seeing it, Chi Wenting was indeed very happy. With a proud expression on her lips, she looked at Mrs. Chi and said, "How about it? Does the little baby like it?" Mrs. Chi, end of this chapter. Chapter 7, Once Born, You Have to Manage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, Once Born, You Have to Manage. Mrs. Chi looked at Orange playing with a black spider toy with a cold expression on her face, somewhat skeptical of the child's aesthetic ability. Looking at my son's proud expression, I felt even more that both the older and younger ones were quite abnormal, so I hugged Tian and kept away from them. "Alright, the food is almost ready. You go sit down." When Chi Wenting saw his mother's defeat and fled, he let out a proud snort and squatted down to pinch the small flesh face of Orange. "Little thing, did I buy a good toy? Orange, where is it good? It's not too bad." But she couldn't tell the truth and could only pretend to be innocent. Hee Baba, then dropped the black spider and asked him to hold it. Chi Wenting just received help from the little orphan and generously picked her up. "Let's go, my boss will treat you to dinner." Orange looked at his smiling face and felt 1,000 emotions in his heart. Her memory of Chi Wenting remained at the age of 15. "In my memory, my dad has always been a serious dad. I didn't expect him to be very youthful when he was young. Like an awkward teenager, with a heavy playful heart." However, this actually made her feel closer, and she quite liked it, so she happily clapped her hands. Chi Wenting likes her bold personality and even scolded her parents a few times for her. "Your parents are really nothing. If you don't want to raise them, don't give birth. If you give birth and abandon them, you should take them to prison. But for your favor, let them go for now." Eating oranges with small hands, Xiao Yuanyan stared at Chi Wenting with a speechless expression on his face, thinking to himself, will the future father who learns the truth regret what he said today? Chi Wenting saw her small face staring at him strangely, thinking she was going to defecate. He was so scared that he placed her on the baby dining chair and pushed it away a long way. More than 9 months of Orange, once again too much. She didn't want to pull the cake, okay. But this way of doing it, I feel a bit like it smells bad. The baby's physiology is still uncontrollable, even at the age of 15, their body is still over 9 months old. Although Orange tried her best to hold it, she couldn't hold it at all. Her little eyebrows furrowed tightly, and her fists were exerting force. Aunt Fong couldn't help but follow her with force. After a while, with a hum, the physiological issue was finally resolved. Chi Wenting walked a long way, pinching his nose. "Aunt Fong, wash her clean quickly. She smells so bad. Aunt Fong couldn't help but laugh and cry. She put Tian on the dining chair and went over to hold the orange. Then you take care of Tian first, and I'll go wash the orange clean, she said. Mrs. Chi doesn't like having too many people at home. She only has 3 or 4 maids and is only responsible for cleaning on weekdays. So the matter of taking care of the children is handled by Aunt Fong and Mrs. Chi. At this moment, Aunt Fong went to change the diaper for Orange, and Tian naturally wanted Chi Wenting to come and see her. Chi Wenting was speechless at the sight of the sweet and frightened baby's eyes. He sat over and pinched his sweet, frightened little face, deliberately causing trouble. "I'm your dad, you're so scared." Sweetheart was already afraid of him. Seeing him so fierce, she kept her mouth wide open and wanted to cry. But when Chi Wenting threatened her, "Don't cry. If you cry again, I'll hit you." Sweetness was indeed intimidated, tears streaming down her lips, and she dared not cry anymore. Chi Wenting watched her cry uncontrollably, both helpless and amused. Rubbing her little head with a big hand, "All right, stop crying. Dad won't hit you." Tian seemed to be comforted, looking at him with a silly expression on her face, and then stopped crying. After changing his diaper, Orange came back and saw Chi Wenting holding Tian high. Both father and daughter laughed happily. Orange looked at it for a while and felt that the stinky dad seemed to be okay, with a yawning mouth, but he shouldn't have a bad heart. Then he crawled over and grabbed Chi Wenting's pants legs, wanting to hug him as well. Baba hug. When Chi Wenting saw her coming, he raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Oh, the expert in defecation is here. Orange, da. My diaphragm is starting to smell bad again, Dad." Orange turned his back in a huff, leaving only a small tug on his back and cursing incessantly in his pacifier. Chi Wenting was so happy that she poked her strawberry bag with her toes and said, "Hey, are you angry?" Orange, breathing heavily, turned around and glared at him, snorted and crawled away. Chi Wenting pulled her back and pinched her small fleshy face. "Little thing, you have a pretty big temper." "I don't know, I thought you were my boss." Orange was lifted high, its short hands and feet waving fiercely, as if it was about to bite. Chi Wenting teased her several times but couldn't bite her. Seeing her look like she was about to cry, she laughed heartily. Mrs. Chi came in with a small snack and heard her son's laughter. "This is already the second time my son has laughed. It seems that bringing the child back is indeed the right thing to do." Like this, Tian saw Chi Wenting playing with Orange and laughed happily, like a little fool. Mrs. Chi also looked at her aunt's smile and said, "All right, it's time for dinner. Sit down." Chi Wenting then put the orange back into the baby dining chair and sat down on his own, waiting for the old man to come downstairs and have dinner together. Mr. Chi arrived late and still held several advertising flyers in his hand. Mrs. Chi held a small bowl and fed Tian while asking the old man, "What are you holding in your hand?" Mr. Chi handed over the advertisement and said, "This is the promotional flyer for the baby early education class. When I come back at noon and see someone posting it, I'll bring it back to take a look." Mrs. Chi let out a sigh and said, "Would you still be looking at this?" Mr. Chi shrugged his shoulders and said arrogantly, "That's. Anyway, I have also cultivated my 2 children into talents, and my granddaughter must also be well cultivated. His greatest pride in this life is to cultivate 2 excellent sons. Now that we are in the granddaughter generation, we naturally have to make great achievements." Mrs. Chi smiled and said, "The child is still young. If you want to learn, you should wait for 2 or 3 years old." Mr. Chi disagreed and said, "It's not small anymore. I can climb now. It's better to send it to adapt early and try to have more courage." Mrs. Chi said helplessly, "Take your time. Sweetness is different from Wenting and the others. My son has been living a prosperous life since childhood, but my granddaughter has been sent to an orphanage, and her mentality is different. Especially sweet and timid, where would one be willing to send it? And oranges are still small. A woman's kindness. If a child wants to be excellent, they must work hard, said Mr. Chi with a click. Besides, Orange is brave and sweet. There's nothing to be afraid of when we're together. Mrs. Chi looked at the orange that was obediently eating complimentary food and felt that it was not impossible. Okay, let's send them to the early education class together when they're 1 year old. However, Mr. Chi said, we must first send them to adapt, right? Familiarize yourself with the environment and the teacher first, so you won't be afraid in the future. Chi Wenting has no objections. As long as you treat your child well and the old man wants to work hard, let him do it. He doesn't have time to spend with his children, so it's good to let his parents spend time with them. Mr. Chi glared at him and said, and you, don't try to shirk responsibility. If you want your child to be excellent and confident, you, as a father, must also participate. You must participate in any parent-child activities for me in the future. Chi Wenting, I still have to work. Mr. Chi glared at him and said, working is amazing. If you don't want to accompany your child, don't give birth. If you give birth, you have to accompany and manage it. Chi Wenting Xiao Orange raises her hand and asks for a ticket. End of this chapter. Chapter 8, Taking Children Out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8, Taking Children Out. Chi Wenting was stared at by her biological father and could only give way. Okay, I'll try my best. Mr. Chi heard him and said, the weekend after tomorrow, take the children out to play at the baby park. Don't just lie at home on vacation. You also need to take the children to see the world. Chi Wenting, can't mom take it over? I finally had a weekend. Mr. Chi glared at him and said, I don't want to take you as a newborn. What is she doing? If you don't want to raise it, don't race against time to give birth to the child. Chi Wenting finally let go of his hand picking vegetables and let out a sigh of relief. I know, I'll just go. If I had known that having a child was so troublesome, I wouldn't have let Lan Jiaojiao be pregnant in the first place. However, he didn't know that Lan Jiaojiao was pregnant at the time, which was really unpredictable. He couldn't help but sigh, turned around, and saw 2 little radishes looking at him with their heads together, curious as if curious about what Grandpa meant by giving birth. Chi Wenting's face turned red with a rare cough, and he glared at the 2 of them, eating your complimentary food. What are you looking at? Children are so fond of listening to gossip. Orange snorted at him, who loves to hear it. But the little ears still stood up curiously, with a curious temperament. Even Tian opened her round eyes and looked at this and that, obviously curious. Sisters seldom have similarities in gossip. Chi Wenting snorted and hurriedly finished his meal before working overtime. It's the weekend. When Chi Wenting finally finished a short period of work and wanted to take a break, he was thrown a mother's backpack and a twin baby stroller by Mr. Chi. Oh, push it on, don't lose the child. Also, there is diaper in the bag, milk powder and warm water, and baby snacks. Remember to make milk powder for the children. Chi Wenting's face turned green. Do you want me to watch the 2 of them alone? When did he see a child when he was so old? Are you not afraid that I won't take good care of you? Mr. Chi snorted at him and said, since this is your first time taking your child out, Aunt Fong will help you a little first, and you'll have to do the rest yourself. Anyway, he made up his mind to let his son raise more children, otherwise in the future, the father-daughter relationship will be weak and the children will be pitiful. Besides, since we have children, we have to take responsibility. Their family doesn't want a heartless man, let alone a heartless father. Chi Wenting knew that the old man was determined to be dead or alive, and had no chance to refute him. He could only accept his fate by carrying his mother's bag, pushing the twin stroller, and going to the nearby shopping mall. He followed the address given by the old man and went to a nearby baby park. Inside are all activities that babies under 1 year old are playing. Chi Wenting was very uncomfortable pushing the baby out for the first time. But after pushing the baby stroller for a while, I realized that the store was filled with moms and dads everywhere, not just him, who was the only man taking the child out. Most mothers look very friendly, and when they see him coming out alone with 2 children, they all warmly greet him. "Are your family twins? It's so cute." Chi Wenting looked at the 2 children in the stroller and thought for a moment, but did not explain. Instead, I started chatting with these moms and said, "How old are your children?" "Bauma number 1, our family has been 11 months and we have been full of energy lately. Why don't we bring it out to play?" Chi Wenting nodded and said, "Our family is over 9 months old, and soon it will be 10 months old." "Bauma number 2, your family is twins, it's much more tiring to bring them up than a single one, isn't it?" "Yes, it's too difficult to bring 2 together," said Naoto Chiwen. "One loves to cry, the other loves to make noise, they are simply demon babies." Orange heard their conversation in the baby stroller, playing with chubby feet board. Sweetly, she was a bit afraid of the unfamiliar environment and curled her lips, wanting to cry. Orange looked at her timid appearance and felt her head with a little fleshy hand. "Don't be afraid." Tian Tian was not afraid when she saw her, and Xiaoro kept holding on to Orange's hand, not letting go at all. Chi Wenting also noticed that Tian Tian was afraid. He picked her up first, and when she adapted, he put her in the pool of the ball. But as soon as she put it down, she was afraid and kept hiding in his arms. Chi Wenting had no choice but to put the orange into the ball pool. "Let her demonstrate to sweetheart. Little devil, give the fool a sweet demonstration and I'll add chicken legs to you tonight. Tool man Orange add you a big-headed ghost." But when she was under the eaves, she still followed suit. She looked at the pink ball overflowing from the pool and happily pounced, playing happily. "Since the baby has been regenerated, let's just have fun. Play everything you haven't played in your previous life." Ha 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 dada dada, she had a great time playing in the pool and didn't care about the father and daughter behind her anymore. Sweetly watching the orange have fun, "That's why I'm coming down." Chi Wenting let her into the ball pool, and Tian Tian first reached out to touch the ball, then withdrew. After adapting for a while and knowing that the ball wasn't scary, I started happily catching it. Orange was mischievous, she lost a ball. Sweetly smiled instantly and threw it over. The 2 children were tossing and playing happily. The little round face giggled and revealed 2 small baby teeth. Chi Wenting looked at the corner of her mouth and snorted coldly, naivety. Aunt Fong could see clearly from the side, and she said to herself that although the young master despised him in his mouth, she could tell that he was quite kind to the 2 children. After playing for a while, both children were hungry and crawled over to ask Chi Wenting for feeding. Orange first climbed over and stood up on Chi Wenting's calf. "Baba," inside, Sweetness followed behind the orange, not knowing how to speak, but her bright and lively eyes also had the same meaning. Chi Wenting took out the milk bottle that Aunt Fong had prepared, gave Orange one first, and placed the other in front of Tian Tian, guiding her to speak. "Call Daddy, only after calling Daddy can I give you food." Sweet and timid, she looked at him and then at the bottle in Orange's hand, looking envious. "Dada." She tilted her head and learned the way to call an orange, shouting loudly. Chi Wenting shook his head seriously and said, "It's not Dada, it's Dad." Tian Tian looked at Orange and then at Dad, feeling that Dad's bottle was not easy to hold, so she decided to look for Orange. Orange with big eyes watery, he looked at the orange and looked at a pitiful little beggar. Orange's hand, drinking milk, beats If you want to drink milk, go find your dad. I have already tasted this and have drooling. Sweetly, as if she understood, shook her little head and said, "No, no, no, no. Dad is very aggressive. If you don't look for him, you will." Orange glanced up at Chi Wenting and let out a sweet tsk, "You coward." Sweetly but with a silly smile, he crawled up to her and affectionately hugged Orange's head, saying, "Dada, Orange, she is very coquettish. Orange can't stand being spoiled the most, so why not give her the bottle? Duh, take it and play coquettish. The disgruntled and arrogant look is exactly the same as Chi Wenting. End of this chapter. Chapter 9, Cold-Faced and Kind-Hearted Dad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9, Cold-Faced and Kind-Hearted Dad. Chi Wenting didn't expect Tuan to leave him and go find the orange, which was a bit speechless and delicious. He squatted down and pinched his sweet little face. Dad, if you don't look, you're looking for this little orphan. The bottles she gave you all came from me. You threw them at the wrong backer, little ghost. Speaking, he pulled out the bottle from Sweet's hand. Sweetheart watched as the bottle was taken away, pursed her lips, and was about to cry in an instant. When she was about to cry, Chi Wenting stuffed a new bottle into her mouth, which finally stopped the crying. Chi Wenting rubbed her head and said, "All right, stop crying, drink some milk quickly, and then go to bed." Tuan was still a bit afraid of him, so she climbed over with a bottle in her mouth and asked for an orange hug. Orange couldn't hold her, and the chubby little hand pressed against the sweet little flesh face, not allowing her to approach. "Dada, don't come over, go find your dad." Sweetheart watched as she didn't hug her, pouting and crying again. Woo, Orange is depressed, I don't know why she is so clingy to herself. The little round face was full of disgust, but the chubby little hand still grabbed her in his arms and patted her back with disgust. Chi Wenting looked at the two of them tightly embracing each other, inexplicably a bit cute. If it weren't for their lack of blood relationship, he would have thought they were twins. Orange knew what he was thinking from his expression and couldn't help but roll his eyes. Heart said, "This baby is your daughter, you big idiot." But no matter how much it is said, it's useless. The setting of this novel world is that the villain doesn't know she has another daughter, and she's currently powerless to change it. I can only drink milk quickly and grow up quickly. In no time, the two children finished drinking milk and began to yawn slowly. Then Chi crawled over to ask Chi Wenting for a hug. Orange, half drowsy in her eyes, crawled into Chi Wenting's arms and hung her short hand around his neck. She tilted her head and leaned against his shoulder, falling asleep. Sweetly seeing this, although she was still afraid of Chi Wenting, she saw that Orange had come and followed her, holding Chi Wenting's neck and leaning her small head against the other side, and also fell asleep. Both children were lying in Chi Wenting's arms, leaning against his shoulders, one on the left and the other on the right, with their small round faces even sleeping flat. Sleeping with pursed lips is particularly cute. Chi Wenting felt the dependence of two small meatballs, and a hard guardrail suddenly softened in her heart. Aunt Fong watched from the side, not bothering and letting their father and daughter have more contact. As for oranges, being able to win the young master's favor is also a blessing. Even if they are not biological, life will not be bad in the future. Chi Wenting didn't think so much, just thought that the two little brats would go to bed after finishing their meal, and didn't know if they wanted to take them home directly. Aunt Fong noticed his hesitation and told him, "The master has said that you should take two more children back in the evening. Take a nap at noon and continue playing in the afternoon. Chi Wenting is so big, just play all morning. Why do you still have to play in the afternoon? What are you playing in the afternoon?" Aunt Fong pointed upstairs and said, "There is a toy room on the second floor, which has many early childhood education toys and pictures. You can interact with the children." Chi Wenting knew she couldn't escape and could only pick up her two children and go upstairs. The few moms indoors were a bit envious of him for treating their children so well. "That man is really kind and gentle with children. He's not like my family. When I asked him to bring the child out, he immediately became deaf and ran away. It really infuriates me. My family is the same. When I asked to accompany my child, I said I wanted to go out with friends. Now the child doesn't kiss him, nor does he let him hold him." Chi Wenting listened to their complaints and felt that the old man was speaking well. If we don't cultivate feelings with our children, they may not get close to them in the future. So in the afternoon, I had the determination to play with my children. Orange woke up to find that the environment had changed again. This seems to be a VIP baby room, with a quiet and cozy environment. She sat up and froze for a while, her chubby hands grabbing her face and then her fleshy ears. Chi Wenting was also taking a nap at this time. He worked for a while while the children were sleeping just now. When you're tired, take a nap. Orange was inexplicably moved to see him sleeping on the small sofa next to him, unable to stretch his long legs. In her previous life, she knew that her father was a cold-faced and kind-hearted person. Although her mouth may not be cold or warm, her actions are all good to her. Even though the previous day's class was very tiring, I still couldn't resist tutoring them with homework. The parent-teacher meeting that should be held never fails. So even if Stinky Dad becomes childish in this life, she will definitely treat him well, study hard in the future, work hard to earn money, and strive to support him in his old age. Chi Wenting, although in his dream, he always felt like something was cursing him. He rubbed his eyes and slowly sat up, also dazed for a while. The deep and bewildered facial features resemble those of an orange. He turned around and saw Orange's round face staring straight at him. Can't help but ask, why? Drinking milk again. Orange, is it so obvious? Chi Wenting snorted and said, you little devil, you know how to drink milk every day. Be careful not to drink it and become a chubby baby. Orange looked down at her round belly and chubby legs, not worried about gaining weight at all. She is clearly a baby fat, but she will lose weight as she grows older. Inside, quickly brew milk for me to drink. Grab Chi Wenting's pants legs and ask for milk to drink. Chi Wenting took her and resigned to make milk powder. I know, I really took you, he said. Aunt Fong heard a sound coming in to make him milk powder and change the diapers for her 2 children before leaving. Tian also woke up, and when she woke up, she was still very stunned, looking silly. Seeing her foolishness, Chi Wenting couldn't help but let out a sigh as he heard the foolish plant woman in the hospital. Hey, if I had known Lan Jiaojiao was so foolish, I would have gone to find her earlier. Without his care, that woman was so foolish that she turned into a vegetable. Saying so, but with a face full of heartache, she picked up Sweetheart with a slightly sour corner of her eyes. Orange noticed that he was in a bad mood and even grabbed his T-shirt to hug him. Hug, Chi Wenting picked her up with the other hand and muttered, I serve Tian because I owe her mother. What's wrong with serving you? Orange puffed up her round little face and snorted. Heart said, sweetly, her mother is my mother, and of course you also owe me. However, Chi Wenting couldn't understand baby language and could only carry the 2 little ones to the toy room outside the door. There are many picture stickers here that can help babies get to know many small animals or fruits. Chi Wenting has just learned from several teachers. At this moment, place the 2 children on the ground, pick up pictures and tell them, look at what this is. Orange knows, that's the pattern of a big strawberry. But her tongue is not flexible, and what she says is, raspberry. Chi Wenting seemed to recognize it and nodded in satisfaction. Daughter, take a look at what this is, said Tian Tianyan, looking at it again. Tian, who had never seen strawberries, looked at Chi Wenting with a silly smile and said, Dada. She didn't even know what it was, so she started to be silly and happily clapped her hands, typical of a scumbag and an optimist. Chi Wenting, this child has really followed her mother 10 out of 10, he really has no genes at all. But forget it, the child is still young. In the future, she will cultivate more and there will always be something she is good at. His daughter from Chi Wenting, not to mention perfect, must always be able to handle it equally. Good night babies, end of this chapter. Chapter 10, Stupid Daughter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, Stupid Daughter. Chi Wenting had a teaching heart and recited the food label to Tian several times, then shuffled the cards and asked her again. Sweet, where are the strawberries? Tian seemed to understand, but also seemed unable to understand. She lay on the ground looking for her favorite picture. Dada cake Chi Wenting okay, just be happy. Where is the bottle? This sweetness knows, but she didn't want to choose, so she chose a strawberry cake on her own. Dada, I found it. Once again, Chi Wenting never mind, the child is still young and it's normal for them to not understand human language. It should be better if we wait longer. Chi Wenting comforted herself that this month's children are all ignorant, probably as stupid as sweet. He looked up at his silly and sweet daughter, then at the clever orange next to him, intending to try whether other babies were the same. So he put a few cards on the ground and asked Orange to look for them. Little ghost, where are the strawberries? If you find it, I'll add 10 milliliters of milk to you tonight. Orange immediately found it, and little Fatty picked up the strawberry card and threw it to him. The little expression looked disdainful, as if saying, naivety. Chi Wenting, are all the agreed babies stupid? Why is this little ghost so smart? No, he is not convinced. How could his daughter lose to an unwanted little orphan? He doesn't believe in evil, takes away all the food cards and replaces them with a small car. Kid, I'll just teach you these little cars once. If you can't find them later, I'll call you a little idiot, she said with a childish curl of her mouth. Orange is not afraid, with a snort, her little face is chubby, not afraid of him. Chi Wenting selected several simple cars and taught her one by one. This white one is an ambulance. This red one is a fire truck. And this blue one is a sprinkler truck, and this green one is a garbage truck. He only taught 4, afraid that the child wouldn't understand and was a bit nervous. Alright, now I'm starting to test you. Where is the ambulance? Orange pouted her red lips and thought for a moment, but didn't immediately point it out. Instead, she looked at Chi Wenting's expression and slowly pointed little Pang's finger to the picture of the ambulance. Chi Wenting originally thought she wouldn't know, but she didn't expect this little guy to really know. Chi Wenting didn't believe in evil and asked again, what about the garbage truck? The garbage truck is green and its shape is difficult to recognize, and I don't know if this little ghost can really recognize it. Orange's chubby little hand followed his nervous expression and first moved towards the direction of the fire truck. Upon seeing Chi Wenting's tense expression, Xiaopong's hand moved to the ambulance position again. Chi Wenting took a deep breath as she thought she couldn't guess. Just as she was about to mock her, Orange suddenly reached out and picked up the card from the garbage truck, throwing it gracefully in front of Chi Wenting. Duh, take it. Chi Wenting, I feel like I've been fooled. Is this little carrot head a prodigy? Chi Wenting couldn't believe it, so she quickly took out her phone and checked it. He scrolled down and saw some videos of 9-month-old babies accurately pointing out card patterns. Some babies are unable to point out and even don't listen to their mothers, playing with themselves. The doctor left a message below, saying that both types of children have normal development, but their areas of talent are different. Parents do not need to be too anxious. Chi Wenting felt relieved when she saw this. So it's not that Sweet is too stupid, it's just that the two children have different areas of expertise. Or perhaps the two children have different levels of concentration. Sweetness tends to focus more on its own small world. Orange can communicate with adults. Chi Wenting glanced at her sweet and focused play and breathed a sigh of relief. As long as this child is not a fool. Sweetly tilted her head and killed, duh. Why does Dad say she's stupid? She's not stupid. She just doesn't want to play with her dad, humph. Orange was watching a joke on the side, secretly saying, Stinky Dad, you also had a day when your precious daughter despised you. Ha ha ha, I deserve it. A smart baby like her didn't even notice it, it's so blind that it doesn't recognize the pearl. In her previous life, she was the top student in her grade, a reliable elementary school bully. Unfortunately, even Dad, who has no vision, cannot see that she will have a talent for learning gods in the future. Humph, stupid Dad. She turned her back angrily, leaving only one small head facing Chi Wenting and not wanting to play with him. Chi Wenting was busy playing with her phone and didn't pay attention to her small movements. I didn't put down my phone until I finished browsing the web page and glanced at the two children. I saw Tian obediently playing with the toy of the small cake and knowing how to arrange the cake neatly. Orange, on the other hand, turned his back to him in anger and didn't know what kind of temper to throw. Chi Wenting was confused and reached out his finger to poke her fleshy side face. What are you doing? You want to drink milk again? Orange glared at him angrily, with a very rich expression on his face. Ah da da da. You stupid dad. Chi Wenting's face was cursed inexplicably. I didn't provoke you, please don't scold me. Orange didn't expect him to recognize it. With a cough, he pretended that he wasn't the one cursing earlier and crawled over to ask him to hug him. Chi Wenting laughed angrily. Why are you so shameless? You want the boss to hug you even after cursing. Orange pretended not to understand, holding Chi Wenting's handsome face in her small hand and rubbing it affectionately, showing a strong desire for survival. Chi Wenting is really angry and has no temper. Next time you scold me, I'll leave you here as a child laborer, she said, pulling out the little tug on her head. Orange whimpered twice, trying to please. Baba, Chi Wenting snorted at her and said, come on, the most common and easy to understand language in this world is cursing, just like baby language. Orange, I'm careless. Next time, let's curse behind your back. Aunt Fong counted the time and came in. Young master, you can go back now. The two children should also be hungry. Eating complimentary foods outside is convenient, and Mrs. Chi is worried. She has already called the children to go back. Chi Wenting was also hungry, holding one in each hand, carrying her mother's bag downstairs, and going back with Aunt Fong. After arriving home, Mrs. Chi has been waiting at the door for a long time. Oh, my good granddaughter, have you missed Grandma? Tian was still very happy to see Mrs. Chi. Relying on holding Mrs. Chi's neck, she looked very affectionate. Orange also leaned over and asked Mrs. Chi to hold her. Old Lady Chi was too happy and hugged the two children in her arms. Oh, why do you think of me like this after only going out for half a day? It seems that my family is still the most popular among children, ha ha ha. Chi Wenting was jealous and glared at two little ghosts. I'll take care of you for free. I worked hard all day, but in the blink of an eye, I only needed my grandmother. Old Tai Chi was so happy that she carried her two children into the house. She has already prepared the complimentary food, which is meat soup and rice paste. Meat soup is made from the freshest pork, and when the thick soup comes out, it is added to the baby batter, stirred well, and ready to eat. Orange and Sweet have been hungry for a long time, and they get excited when they smell the fragrant meat soup. Chi Wenting lifted them onto the dining chairs, one left and one right, and then put on the rice bags. Mrs. Chi skillfully fed Tian, while Chi Wenting fed Oranges. The appearance of two children starving for nourishment is very rare. Even when Mr. Chi saw it, he felt relieved and raised the corners of his mouth. Little hands need tickets. End of this chapter.